Hi, Glenn Kendall here with Concourse Hosting. This is Tableau constituent profile inspired by Google Analytics. So I'm going to walk you through how I made this dashboard to show a constituent profile. So with Google Analytics, it's a nice clean interface. You have a density of information and a few things that you can control, such as date ranges and stuff like that. So I wanted to try to mimic that look and feel with this dashboard. So one of the things I did right off the bat here is to do these sparklines, these really cool little blue sparklines with the line and then the area colored underneath. So I'm going to show you how I do that, and also show you how I'm pulling all these different data points into one dashboard. So let me start out here by, so this is a dashboard and here's all the worksheets on the left that I'm pulling into this dashboard. So I have quite a bit of data that I'm working with. I'm going to go ahead and pop down here to the name. So basically going back over here, you've got, you can pick one constituent. So this is literally all the constituents that we have. Now, granted, this is just sample data, and there's just a few hundred constituents in here. This is Razor's Edge sample data, but I've tested this with larger databases that have millions of constituents, and it works well with that as well, provided you use a Tableau extract. You need to use an extract. Extract is going to be 100 times faster than just connecting directly to SQL. So you allow the user, by displaying this filter up here, to select the constituent that they want. We're going by the user name. And then once they select that, they'll also need to confirm the associated ID with that. I'll explain why that is in just a minute. But yeah, we're basically pulling in a data source that has all of your constituents in it. So clicking down here to the name, so this is where I have the filter and I'm searching on the name, and this particular worksheet is showing just the name. Now you'll notice here on the left I have several different data sources that I'm pulling from. So when I first tried to create a dashboard to do this, I tried to cram everything into one data source, and if you have a lot of constituents and a lot of other data like gift data, notes, proposals, addresses, whatever, like, it really can bog down that data source. And I was obsessed with making this as fast as possible. So instead of getting one huge data source that is slow to refresh, I instead said, hey, let's go with lots of small data sources. And I wanted to have a maximum refresh time of 10 seconds per data source. And I think I've been able to achieve that. Again, I've tested this with some pretty big data sources, and it did well. So the key to doing that is to keep your data sources simple. They don't have to be small, they have to be simple. What does simple mean? It means flat. So you can't have a lot of joins and stuff in it. It's got to be, just one or two joins, but just as flat as possible. Tableau uses a technology called Hyper, so it's really fast at doing data extracts. It can extract, I don't know, in the testing I've done, it can sometimes do like 1 million rows in 2 or 3 seconds. So it's super fast. So this particular data source here, I call it Constituent Profile Core. So in this one, I have just the basics. So I have the constituent information, their age, their name, their records ID. This is important, a unique identifier to say who they are. I'm also pulling in all of their gift data for each particular constituent. Again, if you flatten this out, it will still be fast. And I'm also pulling in constituency. I didn't dare do more than that because it started to bog things down. So these are the core things I have in here again: constituency, gift information, and the name. Things related to the person themselves. So going back over to the profile here, this worksheet name, I just put in here and change the size so that it's just taking up just this little rectangle of space up at the top. And that's really what I'm doing with all of these worksheets. What I've done is I've put them all into float. So they're all floating. So that means rather than Tableau deciding the sizing and how they're kind of locking in next to each other, they float around, and I have exact control over the XY position as well as the width and height. So I've taken the time to do that, just like painstakingly lay everything out. I've made everything afloat and done it that way. So the key things that are pulling from the core are the name here, also the constituency, donations. So this is the total amount that they've given, as well as a sparkline associated with that, the total number of donations they've given and a sparkline associated with that, and then the largest amount they gave, the date that happened, the most recent gift, the amount of that, and the date that that happened. All of these things are pulling from that core data source. Here for giving history, this is how the sparkline works. So in order to do a sparkline, I created dual axis. So first of all, I put the date on the top, and it's important that the date be continuous. So whenever you use a date, it can either be discrete or continuous. If you want to have a sparkline, it needs to be continuous. The frequency that you are sorting on, or sort of not really sorting, but chunking things on, is going to depend on how your sparkline will end up looking. I would say either do month or quarter. If you do something like day, I don't think it ends up being like a really realistic view of things. It can kind of skew things a bit. If you're just looking at day, it's just like, wow, why did they give so much here and so much here? I like to do a bigger period of time, because a lot of time, especially these bigger donors, they may be making a big donation, but it may come in various installments over a period of time, and so quarter is a good thing there to work with. Going back to the sparkline here, so how you do a sparkline is, again, put the date at the top, has to be continuous, and then you do 2 pills of whatever it is that you're counting. So here's the gift amount. The gift amount is just part of my data. I just pull it over here. It automatically wants to do a sum. I let it do a sum. I pull it over twice. You can do that by holding Control down and then dragging the pill over to the side, and it'll make a copy of it. Just like that. Now I have 3. Then you select what's called a dual axis. But before you do the dual axis, I'm going to disable the dual axis so you can see what's happening here. So I basically got 2 different things. So this pill is a line, and this pill over here is an area. So as you click on these, you can see they show up differently on the marks card. This guy's a pill. I select the color. It's going to be a darker color. This one's an area. I choose a lighter color, and also change the opacity. You can make that, to make it even lighter. And then you hit dual axis, and blammo, now they're on top of each other, and you have a cool sparkline, just like Google Analytics does. You can also do tooltip, so when people mouse over it, they can see this performance over time. That's really one of the cool things about a sparkline. I mean, this is why Google Analytics uses them, and you should use them, is it provides a very large amount of information in a small space. And it gives you just a quick glance. You could see, kind of how the performance or the, donation history has been of this person, just at a quick glance. So I do the same thing here with donations, same thing with the sparkline on that guy. So again, all of these: giving history, donations, donation history. Giving is just the number itself, the name, the largest gift, the most recent gift. All of these are all pulling from the same data source, Constituent Profile Core. For these things here, when I'm calculating the most recent and the largest, I have some calculated fields. You can take a look at those to see how I did those. Constituencies, though, you have to do a little bit differently. Constituencies, because there can be more than one constituency. You'll notice here, for example, on donations or giving, I put the value that I'm wanting to display here in the text. And so it just shows up here. There's nothing in columns and rows. It's just the text value. For constituencies, however, I have it in rows. And the reason I have it in rows is because there can be more than one constituency. If I didn't do that and I instead put it over here on the label, this would show up side by side. Then I'd actually have to, play with this to drag this to make it bigger, to have everything show up. But I don't want that. I don't want it to show up side by side. I want it to be displayed in a nice rows like this, however many constituencies there are. So that's an important difference there. So that's it really for the core stuff. Then for linking in these other things like address, how I do that is I'll click on the address field over here for this one. So usually within Tableau, within a worksheet, it's only going to want to talk to one data source at a time. And that's, again, what I've been doing for most of these. There is a new feature, relatively new feature, that Tableau added called data blending that lets you link two data sources in the same worksheet. So that's what we're doing here. The reason I need to do that is because over here in my address data source, I don't have any constituent information. I have the records ID and that's it. So this is just a data source that has a bunch of addresses. Doesn't have the person's name, nothing else about them, just an ID. So that allows me to link back up to this core database. So once you start pulling fields from the new data source over here, it'll say, how are you linking things together? And it actually has this little link icon right here that you literally just click on this guy, and then it creates the link on this records ID. To see the details of how that works, you can go up here under Edit Relationships, and it'll show you the data source it's using. This is the primary, this is the secondary, and Tableau automatically figures out what it should link on, the records ID. Sometimes it won't get this right, and you can customize it and tell it what to do instead. You can edit it, whatever. You can have it link on a certain thing. But here is defining just the relationships. It won't do the actual linking. You still have to click on this link icon in the secondary data source in order to do the link. So for this guy here, I've got I created a calculated field that shows the complete address, and I should have made it in the address data source, but I made it in the core data source. And it's probably good that I did that so you can see like what it's actually doing here. So you can see it's doing, like, rather than just showing address 1, it has the full data source name in front of it, constituent profile address concourse, and then dot the field. So that's why that's showing up like that, because it's referencing that secondary data source. And when I am building the address, I am separating things out with spaces. So I'll put the field, then I'll put plus a space or a comma and a space for the city. And then this part right here, I'm actually putting a line break. So if I just did a space here instead, it would put everything on one line. And then it would just break according to the size of this. But if you want it to, you want to control the break, then you build it into your calculated field here, and you just break like that right there. Just manually add it, and there it goes. All right, so now I've linked the address. So back over here on my dashboard, that's this right here. That's the address. And then for the map, basically doing the same thing. It's the same kind of linking that's happening between the core and the address. It just so happens in the address that we geocode the data, so we actually we calculate the latitude and longitude based on the person's address. This is something we do with all of our customers with their data. We automatically geocode it for them. And so it puts the latitude and longitude up there. And so this will give me an exact pin drop on the map of where the person is. If I were to drill in, I would get like the street location of where this person is in Denver. I won't do that right now. For the map, I've gone up here to map and map layers, and I've gone for the light style and eliminated a lot of these other things in here that are normally enabled, like land cover, base. You know, some people put streets and highways in there too. To me, that just makes it a little messier. Not necessarily messier, it's just, it takes the emphasis off of, you know, just the blue dot of where they are. So going along with the style of Google Analytics, I just wanted to keep this as clean as possible. And so that's why we went with just having the dot on the map instead of where they are. So that's that part, and I promise I still have to show you about the filter. I'll show you that at the end. So that's address. The other ones that we're linking to as well are proposals and notes. Those really work the same way. We have a primary data source and then the secondary data source. In this case, we're doing notes as the primary, core as the secondary. These are the notes. I just put them by the date. I just put the note description there, and then you mouse over to get the full note. I also put the note type. So I thought this was a good way to kind of cram all the note information in a small space. So you didn't have to take up all the space of seeing the entire note in there. You could just mouse over and get the other note information. But like address, the notes data source is just the note information and nothing else. There's the only constituent information in here is the records ID, which is already part of the notes data source. So again, we're doing the blending, the linking is happening on the records ID right there. Same deal here with proposals. Linking on the records ID, and I'm just pulling proposal information. In the case of proposals, there's a little bit more information because it's actually links to prospects, and then prospects are linked to proposals. Again, this is Razor's Edge data. We have ratings in here as well. The sample database doesn't have a lot of good stuff for ratings, but you know, you could throw in rating information in there if your database has it, and be able to incorporate that easily as well. And so that gives us the notes, that gives us the proposals, and that's really the basics of where I'm pulling all these data points from. So going back to the filter up here, the reason that we have two filters is one is this filter is what the people are going to be searching on, right? Because if I'm searching, I want to search on a person's name. I don't want to search on an ID because I don't know their ID. So I'll find their name. However, because I'm linking to these other data sources, I need the ID in order to do that. So going back here to the name, so I have the filter for the person's name, but then I also have a filter for their records ID. And the way you do kind of this two-layer filter is for the first filter, the one that the people will actually use, you want to set it up to be a single value drop down. Otherwise, they're going to potentially select more than one thing. So just do a single value drop down and include all values in the database. For the second one, which you have the records ID in, for this one I do a single value list, so it creates a radio button instead. I also check this one to say it doesn't show the all value, so it can't be all records, it can only be just that records ID, so I deselect the all value. And then I say only show relevant values. So what that does basically is as I change this to another constituent, this ID will update. However, it's not going to take effect till I click on it. So that's kind of a drag with Tableau, is that it won't auto-select that for you. I looked at several workarounds for this, and there are some other ways you can do it, but I think this is really the simplest thing to do, is to just have two clicks that take place. One is select the constituent, and then I put for kind of quote-unquote directions for the next part is to confirm that that is their records ID. And once you click on that, that will then be used as the real filter for all the other data. So this filter here is just for the name, and this is only applied to this worksheet. However, the records ID filter, this guy is applied to all related data sources. So when I create other data sources, it just automatically shows up in here without me doing anything else. And the reason I have to use the records ID is that that's what I'm linking on between my two data sources, right? The ID is what the common thing is that I'm blending between one data source and the other, is the records ID. If I didn't use the ID, I used something else. Say I could somehow get the name in there, and so you would just use the name and not have to have this double clicking. If you did that, you would sacrifice performance on the blending, because if it blends on an ID, it's going to be very fast. If it blends on a name, it's not going to be very fast. So that's what that part is. And then I just threw in a filter for the gift date as well, just to allow the user to select a period of time, sort of like you would do in Google Analytics, to say, I don't want to look at all the giving history, say for a particular person, for a particular constituent. I just want to look at, the last whatever period of time. All right, so that's really it. With this format here of being able to do blending on different kinds of data sources, this just scratches the surface of what you could do. You could pull in events, you could pull in data from other data sources outside of Razor's Edge. Of course, you still have to have that linking ID somehow, but if you had, just like through your email blasts or whatever other databases you have, if you had some kind of linking ID between the two, you could build out and have as many of these data sources as you wanted, and actually have many kinds of constituent profiles depending on what data it is that you want to focus on. So hopefully this gives you some ideas on how you can mix and match data, have really fast data sources, and use data blending to pull them all together. All right, there is a link to download this workbook from Tableau Public. That'll be in the video description, so go ahead and check that out and click on that link to grab this from Tableau Public, or you can just search for my profile, Glenn Kendall, and you can see my other workbooks on my profile on Tableau Public. And if you want to learn about other webinars, I do these once a month, basically build something new in Tableau. Webinars focused on using data for nonprofits and foundations. If you want to get invited to the next one, just text the word Concourse to 345345. That'll get you on the list. Well, actually you have to put in your email address as well. But once you do that, you get on the list and you'll be invited to future webinars. And we'll love to see you at those webinars down the road. And yeah, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks so much for joining, and see you next time.